Good evening, or perhaps good morning, wherever you may be tuning in from. Welcome once again to my study. The rain, I hear, is rather insistent tonight, tapping a steady rhythm against the window panes, a comforting counterpoint to the quiet stillness within these old walls. Draw your chair closer, if you will, and let us consider a matter that touches many of us as the years gently accumulate. The profound distinction between simply being lonely and truly embracing solitude. Many, when alone, lament their fate, feeling a void where companionship once thrived, or where they believe it ought to be. This, my dear friends, is the essence of loneliness. It is not merely the absence of others, but an unwelcome absence, accompanied by a sense of lack, of being cut off, perhaps even forgotten. It is a feeling that gnaws at the spirit, often born from a comparison with what we imagine others to possess, or what society tells us we should have. From a Stoic perspective, loneliness arises when we place our tranquility, our very sense of completeness, in external hands, in the presence of others. When those externals are removed, we feel diminished. We have made ourselves vulnerable to circumstances beyond our control. The Stoics would remind us that our emotional state is rarely dictated by the event itself, but rather by our judgment of the event. Solitude, on the other hand, is an entirely different creature. It is a chosen state, a deliberate withdrawal not from the world, but into oneself. When one embraces solitude, there is no sense of lack, but rather a profound sense of sufficiency. It is an opportunity, a quiet haven where the clamor of external demands can recede, allowing the inner voice of reason and reflection to emerge. The solitary individual does not feel cut off, rather they feel deeply connected to their own inner landscape, their principles and their purpose. They are, in a sense, never truly alone, for they carry within them a world of thought, of memory and of potential. The path from the discomfort of loneliness to the richness of solitude lies precisely in understanding what lies within our power and what does not. We cannot, alas, compel others to be present, nor can we dictate the whims of society. These are externals, beyond our immediate control. To anchor our well-being to such transient elements is to build our house upon shifting sands. What is within our power, however, is our response to being alone. We can choose to perceive it as a burden, a privation, and thus descend into loneliness. Or we can choose to perceive it as an opportunity, a precious space for growth and introspection, and thus ascend into solitude. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control in action. The wise person recognizes that while the presence or absence of others is indifferent, their judgment of that state is not. It is everything. To cultivate solitude, then, is to consciously reframe this time alone. Instead of waiting for external validation or companionship to fill a perceived void, we turn inwards. We engage in activities that nourish the mind and spirit, reading, writing, quiet contemplation, perhaps a mindful walk. We use this time to examine our thoughts, to reinforce our values, to plan our actions with greater clarity and purpose. We become, in essence, our own best company, discovering a wellspring of contentment that is not dependent on external sources. This is not to say we shun companionship when it is offered, merely that we do not require it for our inner peace. The ultimate fruit of embracing solitude, rather than succumbing to loneliness, is the development of an unshakable inner citadel. This is a concept dear to the Stoics, an impregnable fortress of the mind, built upon reason, virtue, and self-sufficiency. Within this citadel, one finds a refuge from the external storms of life, a place where one's peace is secure, regardless of outward circumstances. When we learn to thrive in our own company, we cultivate a profound sense of self-reliance. We discover our own resources, our own strengths, and our own inner wisdom. This self-sufficiency is not arrogance. It is a quiet confidence born of knowing oneself deeply. It makes us less susceptible to the shifting tides of popular opinion, less dependent on the approval of others, and more robust in the face of adversity. For if we can find contentment when physically alone, how much more potent our spirit becomes when we do engage with the world. Moreover, solitude offers a unique clarity. It allows us to examine our prejudices, to challenge our assumptions, and to refine our character without the distractions or pressures of social interaction. It is in these quiet moments that profound insights often emerge, that moral principles become clearer, and that our sense of purpose solidifies. It is a space for true self-mastery, for becoming the person we aspire to be, independent of external accolades or fleeting pleasures. This is not a withdrawal from life, but a preparation for living it more fully, more virtuously, and with greater serenity. These distinctions, I believe, are vital. For while loneliness can indeed be a painful experience, an indicator that we are placing our happiness outside ourselves, solitude is a gift, an intentional turning inward that strengthens the mind and fortifies the spirit. It is the practice of becoming a complete and sufficient human being, finding contentment not in what we lack, but in what we are. Now, as the evening draws in and the rain continues its gentle percussion, I invite you to remain here for a while. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Listen to the rain, perhaps the crackle of the fireplace. Breathe deeply and let these thoughts settle in your heart. Allow the wisdom of the ancients to permeate your being, transforming any sense of lack into a profound sense of sufficiency. The silence is yours.